wanted to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, BrandFlakes here, back with another Eternal Return video. For today's video, we're going to be talking about characters that always seem to end up being meta at some point during the season. These characters won't necessarily always be that good during the season, but you can count on Nimble Neuron just playing favorites and getting them up to that strength at some point. So if you're looking to learn a list of characters that will prove you well in any season, then hopefully this list should do you some good. So just to start, the first character we'll be talking about is going to be Suwa. Suwa is the mage, bruiser, tank, assassin, goddess that kind of exists within Eternal Return. Honestly, this might be more of an NA thing, just because Suwa doesn't seem to be very popular in Korea unless she's super strong. But fortunately for Suwa, she does end up always being meta at some point. I think there was one period of the game's life cycle where Suwa wasn't super strong for like 2 months, and then the moment the season restarted, she got buffed back up and she was an absolute monster for like the next few months. I'm sure at some point they ended up nerfing her, but I stopped playing it by then, so I wouldn't know any better. So the reason why Suwa ends up being so problematic to balance is because her kit fundamentally relies on numbers. She either out-heals you and makes the game very unfun, or she doesn't out-heal you and she kind of just fades away into nothingness. This does make Suwa a pretty high skill ceiling character just because you do have to understand how to hit her abilities and how to manage her cooldowns, because unfortunately if you don't manage her cooldowns correctly, you'll find yourself exploding very quickly in a fight, and then when you go and watch people like Superior, you'll wonder how exactly are they living. It's probably because they're properly managing their skill button presses and therefore live longer than you do in the similar scenario. Again, that isn't to say that Suwa is permanently good. Obviously there are phases where she's pretty bad, but just understand that once you see Suwa on the buff category, she's going to keep getting buffs until Korea picks her up, so get rid of her then. You can ride the LP wave until they decide to finally nerf her. This next character might be a bit of a controversial take to put on this list, but honestly I don't think I've ever seen a time where he has been undeniably bad, and that's going to be Hyunwoo. Hyunwoo is unfortunately the type of character that gets absolutely spammed the moment he's just a little too good, but for some reason when he's balanced to being pretty good, a lot of his players seem to drop him in favor of the next big bruiser character. So if you see a lot of Hyunwoos in your game, that probably means he's pretty meta right now. So Hyunwoo ironically has received nothing but nerfs after his initial set of buffs in the first patch of the season, and despite all that, he's been seeing a lot of good success. I think the issue that a lot of players run into with Hyunwoo is that they try and play him like a true tank, when in reality he's more of a bruiser that really relies on flanking. His kit doesn't really function too well when he's being super focus fired. The main way he's quote-unquote actually tanky is that he isolates the 1v1 and then he kind of tries to crowd control or kite them around in order to stall for his cooldowns. So if you're ever playing Hyunwoo and you think he doesn't feel that great, odds are you might be running into a 1v3 and getting focused by everybody. And if we're being honest, Hyunwoo tends to have the trend of just walking away from those anyways if he plays it properly, which not many characters can boast about. Now, if you're playing Glove Hyunwoo, the odds of you surviving that 1v3 dive are going to be a little bit higher just because that Glove Hyunwoo does be a lot tankier. But at the moment, I think that Tonfa Hyunwoo, which is his assassin amp playstyle, is better right now just because he has so much absurd damage on his kit. It's really funny just because it's either Glove Hyunwoo that's really strong or Tonfa Hyunwoo that's really strong. They both play pretty differently, so you do have to adjust to play the correct style. But in the end, it's just very weird how if one's bad, the other one's good, and if one's good, the other one's bad, and then a lot of the time, there's both good. I genuinely don't remember the last time I've seen Hyunwoo be legitimately bad for that long of a time. He always seems to be immediately buffed the moment he's actually unplayable for more than a patch or two, and then he's back to being viable, to being very good. You just need to understand how to flank with him and how to approach fights so they don't get instantly exploded and get value off of all of your abilities. The next character on this list, Magnus, is in pretty much the same spot as Hyunwoo. If you learn to play Hyunwoo, odds are you've somehow naturally learned how to play Magnus. They're both very similar characters in the fact that they're just these gigantic, beefy HP balls that also provide a lot of good crowd control and are also very good at ratting. I again don't really remember a time where Magnus was clearly unplayable. He's always been either very good as a tank that just lives forever, or as a character that just kind of stuns you into a wall and then one-shots you with his spin and bike. Obviously with squads, that one-shot combo is a bit more toned down because you have to build a bit tankier to survive that long, but I think his performance at the moment in NA, thank you Waterfudge, can kind of speak for itself, and at some point he should be more popular in Korea as well. I think it's really a problem when characters like Hyunwoo, Magnus are meta, just because the meta ends up being so slow and very annoying because you have these gigantic bruisers that you have to respect, because if you don't respect them, they just kill you instantly. The main way that Magnus differs from Hyunwoo is that his gap close is a lot worse unless you use Bike, which is obviously a much more committal usage, so you really have to be careful about your HP total as you go in. You have to stack up your passive manually now. In the past, if you played Magnus, you probably remember that it would just increase your defense as you got lower, but now you actually have to hit people in order to increase your passive. So if you do get W ticks and you're still very high HP, you can go into fights pretty freely, but if you haven't got your W ticks up and you're suddenly half HP, be really careful because you're a lot squishier than you think you are. Magnus is a character that does explode very quickly without his passive stacked, and if you don't have Bike and you don't have passive, you should probably just walk away. A lot of characters can't really chase you because of your tire spam and your E, so they'll probably leave you alone, but just be careful of that because Magnus can get killed even though it feels like you're invincible most of the time. So the last melee bruiser that we have on this list is going to be Dailin. Dailin is a bit different because she kind of leans away from that unkillable status to being somebody who just simply one-shots you if you're in melee of her. I'm sure everyone here has experienced getting their butt smacked by a nunchuck or a glove and then getting ulted and being 100 to 0 very quickly by just getting hit by critical strikes. And unfortunately, that's just kind of the playstyle Nimmerneon has pushed for Dailin. I think there are a few tank playstyles I've seen that seem to kind of work out, but for the most part, you're going to be auto-attacking, you're going to be critting people, and if you crit people, you're going to kill them. If you don't crit people, you're going to run away. And as a common trend with all the other characters on this list, Dailin is very good at running away because her ultimate is essentially a get out of jail free card if you're willing to use it early and correctly, and her Q spam just makes her very safe because you have a constant wall hop, and it does give you pretty good distance in the long term. Dailin is a character that has only really been bad for maybe like 4 months total out of this game's 3-year lifespan, which is pretty impressive considering that when she was bad, she was like pretty bad, but you could still play her, and at her best, she has been the best character in the game. So pretty good track record for Dailin. If you're into that more all-in auto-attack style with a really cool, martial arts finishing ultimate, then she'll probably fit your fancy a bit more than Hyunwoo, Magnus, and Suo will. Just be aware that you are going to be a lot squishier for the most part until you get a lot better at using her W, and unfortunately her W is a bit odd to use because you often will accidentally self-silence yourself if you are drinking a lot. So just be aware of that. Getting silenced is not the biggest shame. It happens to everybody, even the best Dailin players in the world, so just understand that while you're playing her and continue improving because she will reward you in the end once you get very good at her. So the next character is someone that I bring up a lot, and that's going to be Cathy. I honestly don't really remember a time where Cathy was just bad. I think maybe when she was first reworked, she was like, no, even when she was first reworked, she had a bug that made her broken. So Cathy's a character that only has one real niche, and that's Assassinate, and she has always been super good at Assassination. She's never actually been unplayably terrible, so if you get good at suturing and you get good at understanding how she moves within fights and landing those angles, you'll always get super good value. Obviously, landing suture means that she has a very high skill floor and a very high skill cap, but when you're online, you destroy everything, and if you're online, you can't just flop over like a wet noodle, but on the bright side, you're Cathy, so you do have some pretty good ratting abilities. You'll notice that every character on this list is also somehow very good at ratting, so if you have a character that's also very good at ratting, Daniel, then they probably also belong on this list. I just don't have the time to talk about them in great detail. So the last character I want to talk about very briefly is going to be the only ranged character so far, and that's going to be Hart. So Hart is probably the character that has been on the bad end the longest out of all these characters, but you can tell that Hart has a very special place in Nimmerneon's heart because she always ends up being absolutely crazy for the majority of a season, whether it's like one entire season or maybe the next season after one of them. She is always going to be very good when auto attackers are strong, unless her numbers are just very low, and as you can tell by the lack of harsh nerfs to her, Nimmerneon seems to want to keep her pretty good this season, so if you just want to learn her, she'll always serve you well. Just understand that at some point she will be pretty bad, but if she's bad, there's probably another auto attacker that's very good, and Hart mechanics do translate very well. Hart also has a very high skill ceiling because you have to understand how to use her ultimate, and especially in the squad setting, her ultimate is even more powerful. I don't know if you guys have watched the ERM or the Eternal Return Masters tournaments, but a lot of those Korean Hart compositions will actually use her ultimate as a hard crowd control, allowing the other two players to beat on the CC'd enemy players for like 4 seconds straight. So Hart will never truly be bad as long as her ultimate does that, because at the very worst, she's an ult bot that, if used well, provides your team with a free teamfight win. So hopefully this list was pretty helpful if you're looking for characters to start playing. Sorry as usual for not having the correct gameplay in the background. One day I'll have the time or the footage to just slam that in as needed. But until then, you'll have to deal with whatever gameplay I have going on. So hopefully that's entertaining enough. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, let me know what's coming up, and hopefully the patch tomorrow doesn't jinx the video I just made. That would be very unfortunate. Hope you guys all have a good day or night wherever you are, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye bye.